What's up, everybody? Flatline MMA podcast episode number 32. The boys are here. We're going to change things up. Thank you to Mr. Conor McGregor making waves in the MMA world once again. Just on Twitter one day, he just decides to just throw out a "who's the GOAT of MMA" thread. And I think that got the people going. He did it in like 4 different tweets. Right now he's got Anderson Silva at number 1, with him very close behind at number 2, based on like the array of finishes and reign of title defenses from Anderson. Number 3, he had GSP, and then he had John Jones coming in at number 4. But then he kind of bashed Jones, talking about, all the outside of the octagon antics and stuff like that. But and then he kind of ended the tweet off with, he didn't have any, faulty tests or any positive tests for PEDs or anything like that, making him MMA's number 1 GOAT, and he's getting better. He had the 3 finishes over 3 different weight classes, so he's trying to put that to the debate as well. So Conor McGregor basically decides to himself that he is the GOAT of MMA, and he's just getting started. And that sparked many other conversations with other fighters getting into it, all of the MMA media, everyone and their mother just getting into, hey, who are the GOATs of MMA, and who's that number 1 spot? So the Flatline boys decided, hey, let's make our own lists. So let's just get right into it. Let's just start off with my number 5. Coming in for me, might be a shock to everyone, I got Amanda Nunes at number 5 for me. Kev, who did you have?
I had Royce Gracie.
That one. Cool. So let's get right into it. Number 5, I got Amanda Nunes just for, double champ. 5 title defenses of her UFC bantamweight title. Also winning the featherweight title, which she is going to defend UFC 250. Notable victories over, you don't get much better than this, especially in women's MMA. Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Valentina Shevchenko, not once but twice, although it was a little controversial. She still got the win. She beats Valentina, who's going to go down as one of the GOATs in her weight class, twice. Chris Cyborg, Holly Holm. The reason why I have her at number 5 is because she knows how to finish fights, and that's what makes you a GOAT. Being exciting, taking out anyone in your path, and personally, I just think the most impressive win on her resume is just beheading Chris Cyborg when everyone else was afraid to even go toe-to-toe with her. She went in there and knocked Cyborg out in the first friggin' minute, and I think that really defines her career. I just look at her as someone who's untouchable. She has dominated everyone in front of her. Yeah, she had her early losses in her career, but with her, she kind of overcame it. She went back to the drawing board. I feel like she just gets better every single fight. She really shows off her skills, and she's going to go down as the greatest women's fighter of all time. I don't think you can get much better than that. I look at the names on the list. There's been no controversies with her, nothing like that. So I think she's got a pretty clean slate, and she's a pretty good ambassador of the sport. You know what I mean? She's not a shit talker or anything like that. So I think she really knows how to present herself in that way. So coming in number 5, Amanda Nunes. Kev, you're up.
Yeah, kind of to expand on that, when you look at like women's MMA, Ronda Rousey was the one that brought it to the forefront. But when you're talking skills and things that have been done in the UFC past that, you can't compare to what Nunes has done.
No.
She's double champ. Skill-wise, I could only compare it to Shevchenko, and she's got 2 wins over her. So, definitely the best women's MMA fighter we've seen thus far.
Yep.
I would totally agree with that. I had Royce Gracie for my number 5. So the way I kind of picked the people was they would have had to have won a title, had a title defense,
Yep,
and changed the sport in some type of way. So he was the first UFC champion. Went in when the sport was brand new. People were wearing wrestling shoes,
yep,
judo gis, boxing gloves. It was a total mess. It was just, one skill set versus the other. And I think up to that point, no one really knew what jiu-jitsu was. And a lot of those early fighters were just roided up, just huge buff dudes. And he was coming in, I think it was like 170,
Yeah.
just choking people out, winning tournament after tournament. He was fighting multiple times in a night. Some of his things he's got the longest fight in UFC history.
Yes.
Fought 36 minutes straight. So for that reason, being the first UFC champion, bringing jiu-jitsu to the forefront. Now we got, a whole generation of Gracies that have come after him. Gracie jiu-jitsu schools all over the United States, all over the world, that all today's fighters, a large majority of today's fighters, practice with. So that's why I had him as number 5.
All right. Yeah, no, I like that pick. And definitely just kind of going off of impact of the sport, like you said, think about if there was no, Royce Gracie, right? Where would jiu-jitsu be nowadays, right? I think you got, just a lot of people that kind of mimic their style. Think about, all the Gracies in the sport. Think about a guy like Brian Ortega, who's just ridiculous on the ground like that. Like, I think the sport would be definitely a lot different without him. So, hey, I got to agree with that one because he's kind of the one that pushed the sport into the mainstream, especially bringing in jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. So I like that pick. I don't mind it. So cool. Moving on to number 4 for Dom's pick. Your boy, Demetrius Johnson, DJ. Listen, UFC flyweight champion. Obviously, we all know he got traded for Ben Askren. He went to one championship, dominating there as well. Demetrius Johnson has defended his title in UFC 11 times. That is a UFC record. Notable wins: Joseph Benavidez, not once but twice. John Dodson, not once but twice. Ian McCall, Triple C. Henry Cejudo, he's got a win over. And then Kahoji Horiguchi. So those are just some of the names on the Demetrius Johnson hit list tour. And I know a lot of people can even say that Demetrius Johnson is number 1 on a lot of lists. A lot of the lists I saw this week from different MMA analysts and reporters, they have DJ at number 1. The reason why I don't have it at number 1 is really the lack of competition in the flyweight division. He just made it look so easy for so many years, man. And it's like, all respect to him. And was the division just that bad, or was Demetrius just that much better than everyone else? And the reason why I have him at number 4, not number 1, is, we saw what happened when he moved up a weight. He went to bantamweight, fought Dominic Cruz. He lost, went back down, and he just dominated for years to come. And I think with Demetrius, he was a finisher. He finished fights. He was fun to watch, but he just wasn't that pay-per-view draw that I think Dana White was looking for. Everyone loved Mighty Mouse. Did people want to watch him fight? Not really, because they really knew the outcome. He was going to be quicker than everyone else, and he was probably going to get, a finish at some point. So I think with Demetrius, just going off title defenses alone, he's got to be in the top 5 in most lists, just because that is a feat that, not a lot of people, as you're going to see on this list, have, over the double-digit title defenses. So, and he's still dominating. He's still in 1 championship, still dominating there. So the guy's a legend. Demetrius Johnson will be missed. Obviously, Henry Cejudo kind of took his spot in the flyweight division, took that over after he beat him, and kind of built a name for himself there. But DJ did build that flyweight division, and without DJ, there wouldn't have, we wouldn't have seen other fighters like Dodson, Benavidez, guys like that stepping up and having exciting fights as well. So number 4 on my list, Demetrius Johnson. And especially with him, no controversies, anything like that outside of the octagon. He's such a good ambassador for the sport. He's respectful, doesn't talk trash, playing video games with fans, stuff like that. So he's definitely someone who, all around, if you're looking for, pound for pound, GOAT, top 5, he's got to be in a lot of lists there. So number 4, Demetrius Johnson. Kev, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, number 4, I had Chuck Liddell on my list. Mm-hmm. So, he's won light heavyweight title, defended it 4 times. He was really, so he started fighting when the UFC started becoming a little bit more organized. They, standardized the gloves. they had, set rules. There wasn't any more eye gouging and hair pulling. It was actually becoming MMA. And I feel like he was like the first real star of
Yes.
the sport with he's had some incredible knockouts. They used his footage, highlight reels, commercials. Yeah, he just had a great career, and he had some rivalries too, which were pretty fun to watch. I think, at the early days, they kind of made it like a WWE type thing with the Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz. But with him and Randy Couture, you could tell like there was the skill level was what sold the fight. Was Chuck Liddell striking versus Randy Couture's Olympic level wrestling, and that kind of got some excitement, especially with Couture getting the win over him, and then Liddell winning the second fight with a knockout and set up for a trilogy, which Liddell won. So I think his story, his time with the UFC was kind of monumental in building it to what it is today. And a lot of fighters say they got their inspiration from Chuck Liddell. He was like one of the first role models in the sport.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, Chuck Liddell brought this sport to another level. He was, the Conor McGregor of that era, right? Everyone wanted to see him. He was the friggin' Iceman. He was putting people out with one shot. And I think at the time, the UFC didn't really, ever see someone like that where they had that one punch knockout power. And I think, yeah, even if you look at him now, everyone and their mother knows who Chuck Liddell is. I don't care if you just got into MMA yesterday. You're going to know the Iceman. You're going to watch his highlights. You're going to watch the highlights of him knocking out Tito Ortiz. And you know what I mean? It's going to live on forever. He's in the movies. He's playing some sort of role where he's, beating someone up in a movie. So it doesn't matter. So great pick there. I know that he's someone that transcended the sport. So I definitely think that that's 100% GOAT list worthy there. So moving on, I know me and you had these flip-flopped. At number 3, I had Johnny Bones Jones, and at number 3, you had Anderson Silva. So let me just get into why I picked, why I had Anderson Silva at number 2 and John Jones at number 3. So I'll talk about that. So I look at both careers, right? Anderson Silva, UFC middleweight champion, 10 title defenses, really just eliminated everyone in his path, right? He had a hit list like you've never seen before. Rich Franklin, Dan Henderson, Forrest Griffin, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen twice. And it just seemed like he was doing it with ease. And, really the world's never seen anything like an Anderson Silva before. No one had that type of style in the UFC. And he was doing it. He was having fun. You know what I mean? He's Brazilian too. So he came over and he was just dismantling guys left and right. And I think, obviously he was at such a high level, and I think people were trying to mimic his style. He was the first guy to just trash talk you in the octagon, make you feel like a piece of shit. He was doing it to everyone. He was doing it to freaking Forrest Griffin. He was doing it to Bonner. He was doing it to everyone. And I think he's a guy that was at one point, I think he was invincible. And I think, after that Weidman, freak knockout, I think people, that's kind of where he diminished a little bit. But he really did, as much as he's still trying to fight and do everything, I think he's still a top-level fighter. Obviously, we saw him fight Israel Adesanya not too long ago and go to decision with him and still put in some good shots. Now, with Anderson, I know he's, tested positive for steroids. So does that taint it a little bit? Yeah, I think so. And if you watch DC's interview with Ariel Helwani, Anderson Silva's not even on this list. But when I look at Anderson Silva versus John Jones, I look at how Anderson Silva did it, and I think it's more impressive and obviously less out of the octagon antics, which takes me to John Jones, UFC light heavyweight champion, 11 title defenses, so he's tied right there with DJ. Not consecutive, obviously, because he got stripped, then he won it again. So I think he did 8, and then he did 3. but obviously notable victories: Daniel Cormier twice, Rampage Jackson, Shogun, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Gustafsson twice. And his biggest flaw is just kind of the out of the octagon antics, stuff like that. If you look at the careers of both of these guys, Anderson Silva, John Jones, very, they can be mirrored, right? I just look at Silva and I see the flashy finishes. I see the trash talking in your face. Yeah, you see the positive steroid results and kind of, that one title defense versus Damian Maia where it was just probably one of the worst fights in UFC history where he kind of just stood there, didn't do anything the whole time. But I just look at Anderson Silva and I think he was honestly one of the first true, in the UFC, that's who you used to call the GOAT, was Anderson Silva, before the John Jones even came around, you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, Jones has an absolute hit list of killers on his name that he's taken. A lot of people want to argue, yeah, they were kind of out of their prime when he was facing them, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, this was a hard decision to pick Jones at 3, Anderson for 2 for me. But curious as to why you did it the other way around, Kev.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Anderson Silva is 3rd on my list. He was kind of the first one to me to, the first true mixed martial artist.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you couldn't get by anymore with just being a wrestler with a good right hand.
Yeah.
Or just a pure jiu-jitsu fighter. You had to mix everything up. And I think he was the first one to really clicked. And his creativity in there and his awareness and his timing, it was just way beyond where everybody else was at that time. So that's why I got him on my list as number 3. The reason I don't, I have John Jones over him is because Jones' story isn't finished yet. He still can make that jump to heavyweight, become a double champ, which would be pretty crazy. He's got no true losses on his record. That was another thing that I chose Jones over Silva. And, with Jones, you really, he does have the, outside of the octagon antics where, he gets in trouble, that does all this stuff. But when you see him in the octagon, he doesn't lose focus. When it's a title fight, he knows the seriousness of it the entire time. He doesn't take breaks. He's always looking for the win. My only thing with Silva is that you see him kind of play around in there. And it's, could be head games, him trying to get into people's heads, but he got in trouble twice doing it. He got knocked out and, in fights that I think he should have won, that would have added to his legacy.
Oh, of course.
So that's why I got Jones above Silva.
Yeah. No, and obviously on a lot of lists that I saw, these two were flip-flopped on almost every friggin' list. So I think when I look at Jones too, I see a lot of close fights. You know what I mean? And that's kind of why I had him behind Silva, just because, Jones, think about just, he had, Gustafsson, which was, that could have went either way, man. A lot of people had Gustafsson winning that first fight, right? He just had the Dom Reyes fight where I know we talked about it. We scored that for Reyes, man. And that's obviously that's still a win in his win column. He's still got, I know he's got that one from, the disqualification, but you're right. John Jones is really a true undefeated fighter. And, I think what he's done is super impressive, man. He still finishes people. I think as of late, I think Jones has been getting, I think he's moving down more lists just because he's not finishing fights as often as he was in the beginning of his career. And that's the reason why I have Silva up there, just because I think, during Silva's prime, man, I think he was just putting people away with these. I don't even think he was breaking sweat half the time. That's the only my reason. But again, those are both flip-flops. So obviously two of the best mixed martial artists ever. Question on that: Jones, Silva, say they're fighting, let's just say light heavyweight. Who takes that in their primes? Let's say a 25-year-old Bones Jones and a prime Silva. Who do you think would take that? Just purely based 5 rounds, title fight. What do you think? It's tough. I bet you didn't think of that.
I think Jones at that point.
Really?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. He just always seems to find a way to win. I know he's had some decisions that were a little sketchy, but at that point, at that age, he's using his wrestling a little bit more.
Yep.
I think he would be the stronger fighter in there, and I think their striking would be pretty comparable. I don't know if and he can take some shots too.
Prove that. Yep.
I don't know if Silva would knock him out, but yeah, no, that'd definitely be an interesting fight to see. The two of them in their prime at the same weight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm going with Silva on this one. I think Silva brings a different kind of technique that Jones has really never seen before. You know what I mean? And Silva was so shifty and so creative in there that a lot of people just didn't have an answer to. But who knows? I think maybe nowadays, people mimic that style. There was really no one like him when this all first started. So I think a lot of people are trying to mimic him, aka Israel Adesanya, who wants to fight John Jones. So that could kind of be like that fight that we never saw with Silva and John Jones. So I'm curious to see that one. But obviously, two of the best mixed martial artists on planet Earth ever in the sport. So, and then let's go to number one, buddy, because I know we had a concisus pick on this one. Number one, true MMA GOAT. You got to go with George St. Pierre. Personally, I don't think this is a debate at all. I think this is clear on most people's boards. George St. Pierre, the UFC welterweight and UFC middleweight champion. He is a double champ. He had 8 title defenses of his welterweight belt. Notable victories: BJ Penn twice, Matt Hughes, Dan Hardy, Jake Shields, Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz, and then Michael Bisping for the UFC middleweight championship. Fun fact, GSP has beaten everyone that has beaten him. So he's won all of his rematches. I think that alone is super impressive, beating, Matt Hughes and Matt Serra. And I think when you look at GSP, he's kind of like, I know how you talked about Silva being like that true martial artist, but you could say the same thing about GSP. He's so respectful, no controversies. He always came to fight. Did he have the most exciting fights in the world? No. But like you said with Jones, GSP always found a way to win. He always found a way to overpower his opponents, and he did it, flawlessly. I think he came in. His wrestling was so unique, and he just smothered you. Obviously, you look at a guy like Khabib. It's kind of like who he mimics his fighting style off of. So with GSP, he just has an absolute hit list. 8 title defenses. He kind of went out on top too. I think not a lot of people can say that. He went out as the UFC welterweight champion against Johnny Hendricks, although that might have been a little controversial. And then he comes back off a 4 or 5 year layoff to fight Mike Bisping, who's been so active, who just won the title, and submits Mike Bisping to become the UFC middleweight champion, then to just retire after. Went out on top, not once but twice. Kev, what do you think about GSP in the number one spot? Because I know you had him too.
Yeah, I mean, just his career when he was active was insane, and for him to come back, in the past few years, the game has changed so much. Yeah. The level of competition, the way fighters fight now is a lot different than when GSP had his reign. So for him to come back, years later, walk into a title fight in, Square Garden with Michael Bisping and get the finish, it was just insane. Just proving that he's still one of the greatest. Everything was there. His hands were working, his ground and pound. He was moving up in weight, so he looked a little fatigued, at parts of the fight. But again, he's always finds a way to win, and he got the finish there. And his story's still not finished either. talks about, him fighting Khabib.
Yep.
Um, you know, he's got so many different options that everybody wants to fight him just to, prove themselves as, one of the top competitors in the sport. So he's got so many different options right now, and we could definitely see him back at some point.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, you got to think he did, he retired relatively young the first time he kind of retired, right after that Johnny Hendricks fight. He took kind of a beating there, and he walked away. But he walked away on top. Like you said, there's always people that are calling him out. You know what I mean? Habib's been bargaining for that fight for years now. And that's a fight I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see two of probably, the best wrestlers ever in MMA just kind of go at it, butt heads. And I think obviously, GSP is just super respectful. And I think that fight with Khabib would be awesome. I do think he'll come back. Firas Zahabi always is saying that GSP is literally in the gym every day. He doesn't take days off, even after all these years of being retired, after beating Michael Bisping for the middleweight crown. The guy's just overall, I think he's number one just for obviously so many different reasons. You look at his resume, you look at the way he fought, you look at, the sportsmanship, everything that he went through. But I think he transcended the sport too. I think, you look at Canada, right? You go there, everyone knows who GSP is. It's insane. He brought, that whole country to bring their eyes to the UFC. So I think if you talk about someone transcending the sport, GSP's up there. GSP, Flatline MMA's pound for pound MMA GOAT. I know he was on a ton of lists at number one, if not number two. So, GSP is not breaking the top three on many lists. I don't think he's getting past there. So he's either 1, 2, or 3. So Flatline MMA, we got the top 5 MMA GOATs there. So kind of a switch segment of what we typically do, but let's just get into the new topic. Fight this weekend, UFC Fight Night. We have the former welterweight champion Tyron Woodley coming back, taking on Gilbert Burns at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. Let's just dive right into this one, Kev, real quick. What do you think about this fight? Because I am jacked up over this one.
Yeah, I'm excited for this fight, but I don't think it made a whole lot of sense for Woodley to take it. You know what I mean? Because when it comes to that division, you got, he just lost the title. That was his last fight. He lost the title. Usually, the way the UFC has done it, when someone's had a long title reign, they lose the title in a decision. He didn't get finished.
Yeah.
Right? It was a pretty one-sided decision. You would think that Woodley would get that chance, that rematch.
Yeah.
So I would have thought that he would have tried to stay in that realm where, you get Usman, Covington, and Masvidal right there. I was thinking one of those three would be, his only choices. For him to go with Burns, it's a dangerous fight, and I don't know if it wins him a whole lot to, win that fight. I think he's got a lot more to lose taking this fight. But, skill-wise, Burns looked great against Damian Maia in his last fight. His hands were super fast. His jiu-jitsu is really, really dangerous.
Yep.
He could be a really tough matchup for Woodley.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you look at someone like Woodley, who was so defeated in his last fight, right? Woodley was on an absolute tear when he had the belt. You know what I mean? Speaking of MMA GOATs, he was writing his own legacy, man. And then Kamaru Usman came in and just dominated him like we've never seen anyone dominate Woodley before like that. So I think, Woodley took the layoff, right? There was all these talks about, is he going to fight Colby? Is he going to fight, Leon Edwards? Is he going to, all those guys? They all had a chance. Was he going to get the rematch? And then you're right. When Kamaru and Colby got announced, I was confused because I was like, listen, Tyron didn't get finished. Like you said, yeah, it was one-sided, but the champion should, I feel like, get that rematch, Was it Tyron's night? that night, absolutely not. He got dominated, but I think people are sleeping on Woodley, and I think they are not seeing what he did in the past, and they're only looking at that one performance. They're looking at his out of the octagon stuff, like his rap career and him on TMZ all the time and like doing stuff like that. And I think people are really not seeing him for kind of the beast that he was and what he was doing as a champion. I mean, he took the belt from Robbie Lawler and knocked him out silly in the first round. You know what I mean? That's something that people overlook. They overlook his hands. He's got one friggin' punch power. He can wrestle. He's good everywhere, and he's an absolute monster of a human. But like you said, Gilbert Burns is on a tear. He's on a 5-fight win streak. Gilbert Burns is good everywhere. This is a dangerous fight for Woodley. It's a risky fight because if he loses this one, his star power. It's his fight with Colby isn't really big as much. His fight with Leon Edwards isn't big as much. And obviously his rematch with Kamaru Usman isn't big anymore. So I look at this fight and I'm wondering why he's fighting Gilbert Burns. I'm wondering why he isn't fighting a Colby or a Leon Edwards, because that was the fight to make. It's Tyron versus Leon, and then that one got canceled, and then this one kind of came up. So, I mean, to be completely honest, I think Willie's got a chip on his shoulder here. I think he's going to run through Gilbert. I think he's pissed off. I think he wants that belt back, and I think he's going to do everything in his power to get another shot at this belt. And I see Woodley, honestly, I see him finishing this one with ease. I really do. I think people are sleeping on him. But I think if he shows up with the same mentality that he did for the Usman fight, I think it's going to be a long night for Woodley.
Yeah, and that's my question with him too. Is he going to show up the same way that he did with Usman? You know, you kind of saw him get defeated in that fight, being taken down every single round, kind of losing the striking exchanges as well. It just really took the wind out of his sails, and it didn't seem like he was, trying to get that win. He just kind of saw it as a loss halfway through the fight. So yeah, if he goes in with that, it's going to be a really tough fight for him. But if he fights the way, we've seen him, knock out Lawler, knock down Till, he's got some crazy power in his hands. He can definitely take Burns out in this fight, but he just has to be on. He has to be focused.
Yeah, it's someone which Tyron Woodley's going to show up. So I think that question is going to be answered. I'm excited to see him back because you know what, he was an exciting champion. Obviously, he had those 2 awesome fights with Wonder Boy. I think those were awesome. Obviously, him winning the title from Robbie Lawler. The Damian Maia one where he stuffed, I think, 21 takedown attempts, which was obviously crazy. Him kind of derailing the Darren Till hype train. The guy, does he have the best relationship with the UFC? No. Has he been outspoken about certain things that Dana White hasn't liked? Yes, but you can't deny what he's done in the octagon, his credentials. He definitely deserved to be a champion, and I think he definitely deserves another shot. So like you said, let's see what Tyron shows up, because if he's on, Gilbert Burns is going to be in for a long night. But if he's not, Gilbert Burns, I can see him getting his hand raised in this one. So we'll see which Tyron shows up. And then just sticking with the welterweight division, I know this has been a huge topic as of over the weekend. We had Ali, obviously the manager of, Khabib, Usman, Gaethje, tweeting out that, Jorge Masvidal is looking to do the rematch with Nate Diaz because Jorge was tweeting at Nate, doing other things. So he said Usman versus McGregor for the welterweight strap this summer. And then Twitter kind of just started exploding. Everyone's talking about McGregor, Usman. Should he take the fight? Shouldn't he? Is he going to be a triple champ? What's going to happen here? McGregor, Usman. Kev, do you even see this happening? Is this a fight that you want to see? Is this do you think this is actually going to happen?
I don't think so.
Really?
And I think it's going to be all on the UFC preventing that fight from happening.
Yeah.
Because, the people that McGregor's fought in that division, in that 170-pound division, they're not native to that weight. You know,
True 170. Yeah.
yeah, Nate Diaz, he's fought 155. Cerrone has fought a lot of his career at 155. Someone who's a true 170 like Usman, walking around at probably 200 pounds, cutting to 170, and then being close to 200 pounds again fight night is completely different than fighting Cerrone, who's maybe walking around 180 or something like that,
Yeah.
cutting down to 170, and then is like 177 on fight night. It's a huge difference with the power, and especially with the style of the fight, like the way it's going to go down with Usman taking him down, and Connor's gas tank not being the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
I think he put a beating on Connor, to be honest.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, see, I don't think the fight's going to happen either, but I also think that the UFC wants Conor to be a 3-division champ. That's where I'm kind of like optimistic with this fight. But I think what needs to happen is I think the UFC is hoping Jorge Usman fight.
Mm-hmm.
Jorge beats Usman, and then it's Jorge Conor stand-up battle for the third belt. That's where I think is going to happen. But it's looking like Jorge wants that Nate money again, and he wants to do the rematch, which I don't see the benefit of that when Jorge kind of beat up Nate for 3 rounds. So I'm just curious as to is Jorge ducking Usman, because Jorge has got that star power right now. If he loses to Usman and he gets taken down repeatedly and does all that, he loses all that. So it's like, hey, why not go for that Nate fight again and make it a fight that the fans want to see? Because obviously every time Nate Diaz fights, you're going to watch. But I truly believe the UFC wants Conor to be the welterweight champion. I think they benefit from him being champion again. And I think, I don't know if they realize that, he might never beat Khabib, but I just don't see, I think Usman is a fucking bigger version of Khabib. He's a monster. He is a monster in there. Usman is one of those guys, like, to be completely honest, I don't see Usman losing his belt anytime soon. I think Usman has all the tools, and once he really gets his striking down, I think he is going to be literally one of the pound for pound best fighters on planet Earth, because he is scary. What he did to Tyron Woodley was incredible. Obviously, his fight with Colby, where he overcame some adversity in that fight. Colby was hitting him with some good shots. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Colby getting into people's heads with his trash talk. Usman was unfazed in there, and then did what a champion does: finish your opponent in the 5th round when you're tired, when you got nothing left in the tank. Usman didn't even look like he was breathing heavy. It was incredible. And he's one of those guys who I can see holding the belt for a while. If Conor fights him, do I think Conor has a chance? Fuck no. And I'm a Conor fanboy. Absolutely no chance. I think, what does Conor have a chance in there? Maybe the first minute he catches him. But, we've kind of already seen what Conor's power at welterweight looks like. Yeah, you can look at the Cowboy fight and say, oh, he knocked him out, he did this. But, like you said, Cowboy's not a true 170. Usman wakes up in the morning, he's friggin' 205, and he's cutting down to 170 like a savage. You can see he's got no fat in his body. He's an absolute monster of a human. And it's just weird to me that Ali tweeted that out, but he's also saying that, Conor needs 10 more fights in a row to face Khabib. So that's why I'm just confused with the whole thing. But, I mean, what do you think kind of the tactic is here? What do you think is actually going to happen next with Conor and with Usman? Like, what do you think is actually going to happen there?
I think Conor is going to stay at 155. I think, whatever happens at, with Khabib and Gaethje, I think Conor might be the next one in line.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that he deserves it over, Poirier, or, if Poirier beats Hooker, that puts him back into the conversation as well.
Even Ferguson again, you know what I mean? Ferguson's right there.
Ferguson, just one loss. But yeah, Conor's got the power. He doesn't have to have the wins behind him.
No.
He's already got, his reputation. Him and Khabib would be a huge fight, pay-per-view sales. Him Gaethje would be a huge fight in pay-per-view sales. And I think that weight is where he performs the best.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I know it seems like we talk about Conor McGregor a lot. You know, he's always in the news. I think, curious to see what happens this summer with him. I know Dana White said he wanted to fight on Fight Island, but, do you do a Conor McGregor show without fans? Who knows? But I think absolutely I don't advise him to fight Kamaru Usman. I agree. I think you stick at 155 at your, I think Conor looks good at 155. I think he's got the power at 155, and I think he could put anyone's lights out when he's on, when he's not, partying, doing all the things that he, supposedly was doing during the Khabib fight camp. So there's so many fun fights for him, man, at 155. Why not test the waters? Why not, take a crack at Poirier again? Why not fight Tony Ferguson? Why not sit around for Gaethje, Khabib? Who knows what's going to happen in that fight? So, and then with Usman, Usman's got so many options. He's the champ. He wants to defend it as many times as possible. I know, we were talking about GSP earlier. He's someone that called out GSP. He wants to fight GSP, like all that stuff. So I think both of these guys have so many options. Obviously, Conor's the biggest superstar, not just in the MMA world, but he's one of the biggest athletes on the planet. Everyone knows who Conor McGregor is. So when he speaks, everyone listens. When he tweets, everyone listens. And that's kind of what got us into this whole GOAT thread. So listen, hope you guys enjoyed the new discussion. Click that subscribe button. Let's friggin' blow this page up. We're going to get into more stuff like this rather than just kind of shooting the shit. So we're going to do more of that. UFC Fight Night this Saturday at the Apex. It's going to be awesome seeing that. So that's kind of where the Ultimate Fighter, where Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series is and stuff like that. So it's going to be cool seeing that. I know we got a ton more fights coming up. They're announcing them left and right. UFC 250 is getting absolutely stacked. So we'll talk about that next week on the show. What do you got, buddy?
That's it.
Cool. Until next time, Flatline MMA.
Peace.